Hi everyone, welcome to the Aicon Contemporary Instagram Live that we've been doing Saturday mornings. It's 11 a.m. here, and you can hear this huge fire department FDNY rig. Maybe Lena, you can point it out, because we have this big firehouse right across the street from the gallery. But anyway, it is 11 and it is time for us to do Instagram Live today with Seher Naveed. Seher is Karachi-based. He's a visual artist whose show Contain is opening today. Is opening right now at the gallery, and that's what we're going to Seher on.
Yeah, let me add her right now.
Hi Seher, I can't see you. The last time we did this, so I'm just going to trust Lena's hand signals. And Seher is on.
Seher is on. She's here with us.
Hey Seher, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Very good. Good to be on Instagram Live with you again, and today for this wonderful opening of your show. And I was just showing the people the scenes from street life in here in New York, where there's a fire department drill going on right across the street from us. But let's kind of go into the show. The show is called Contain, and you can speak about it. You have already gotten a little bit of a preview ahead of this, so you can pick which work you want to start with, which works to go to next, etc. I'm currently in the front gallery, where there are a bunch of color drawings. Then at the back of me in the large gallery, of course, is the three-dimensional sculptural works. So why don't you pick a work and we will go there and we can start. How does that sound?
Right. So, Prajwal, I can't really hear you that well.
Oh, she can't hear.
But
I
I think you're asking me to pick a point to start talking.
So I think there's a lot of noise going on, and that might be why you can't hear me. But we just shut the door, and which will make things a little quieter. Hopefully you can hear better
That's
now.
a lot better.
That's much better. Thank you. So I was asking you, Seher, to pick a work, or maybe I can pick one for you, and I love the clips in the back, and maybe we can start. You can start telling us about those works.
So I think we can start with the drawings that you have in.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, so we're in the drawing section, the drawing room. So yes.
All right.
Tell us.
So I think. Yeah, I was just speaking to Lena earlier, just telling her where sort of the idea of these drawings with these images of containers, part of particular landscape, began a couple of years ago, and this is at a time when Karachi's security situation was quite terrible. Bomb blasts were going. You'd have one bomb blast going off every day, if not more. And that was in the news all the time, and that would really sort of kind of be an obstruction on its own for everyone's day-to-day activities. But because of the heightened security situation, the containers became something that we would see very often on the streets. Karachi is a port city, and you do have containers here, but within the port compound, eventually over time, they sort of became objects that could fence, or became kind of defense and a security barrier. So you would often see sort of high official buildings, government buildings, or sort of really upscale hotels that would be they would build a wall of these containers as a way to perhaps protect them from any possible attack. These containers also started coming in within roads, within sort of residential areas, within commercial areas. Anytime there was a threat or they wanted to block off certain routes, they would always bring these containers.
Very famously, Seher, there was a container from which Imran Khan fell down while
Yes.
it was a part of a political rally, containers also became like crowd control devices, like those friendly and unfriendly containers, but even friendly containers, I think it was to be the stage or something for his speech, but he just fell from it, right?
Yes. So, I mean, exactly. And I think the container then sort of became a very, I guess, a political object in that sense as well, where people recognized container not just as something that's there to transport goods and, could symbolize sea and transportation, economy, all of that, but it became something that at least people in Karachi started familiarizing it with political rallies, with protests, with ideas of sort of blocking off routes. So that's where I started sort of taking note of the container. Also because I do have an interest in architecture. I do have an interest in sort of these kind of geometric forms and patterns that you do see around in the city. But the drawings themselves became, the idea of composing these drawings was there in essence to also create a certain kind of barricade or a certain kind of formal blockage. And I think at some point within me making these drawings, the narrative was left behind, and my focus turned towards composition, turned towards and an interplay of color, and this interaction of color that would then give form to certain geometric elements. So after that, I started using the image of the container into painting onto walls of galleries directly, or they were sort of used in more site-specific exhibitions, and that sort of also determined again the narrative within the work. So, in a sense, I think I was comfortable with sort of having a narrative, but at the same time, in some instances, if the narrative would leave the work, that was fine with me as well. And I think that's kind of what, at least what I'm familiar with, what my practice has become, is that there will be instances in the practice where there'll be more descriptive imagery, and parts of the practice where I'll have more formal concerns.
So I was personally very struck, and we just lingered for a moment on one of your more graphic works, and we'll see more of that coming up soon. But I was very fascinated by your kind of, I was reminded of Saul Lewitt. I was reminded of these very flat bands of color that then come together and create a three-dimensionality that you have been doing in this work, and that I find it very effective. But we are now continuing to stay with still the drawings, and these are graphite pencil drawings of gates, correct?
Yes.
And these are just.
Prajol, I can't hear you again. Is your
No,
there's a lot of echo.
No, mainly because I'm now standing like shoulder to shoulder with Lena, so that we can show the work rather than me. But and I think that the mic. But anyway, go ahead and talk about these works.
All right. So the gates also came as I had mentioned earlier. I do have an interest in architecture, and when I was sort of looking or collecting images and of sort of these containers and of sort of these architectural kind of constructions that were becoming part of Karachi's landscape, which were also being informed by Karachi's security concerns and various other sort of infographics concerns that Karachi has. I started seeing sort of the residential areas within Karachi as places that were becoming very inwards. So there was the element of community living, neighborhoods, what we once experienced as little children, is, you don't really see that very often now. People, even in new sort of constructed homes, um, and I guess I'm not just talking about houses, but even sort of apartment buildings, any other kind of constructions where people are going to live in, they are becoming more inward looking. So the concept of sort of these big scale, big, open windows, light, air, all of that is not important at all anymore. And I think the idea for these works is probably coming from that, where I'm kind of looking at various elements that we do see within our own construction in Karachi. So things like grills and spikes, metal, concrete, and how these are, you see a sense of like a verticality in them over time. And it's really interesting because of even the way they're constructed, you can kind of tell the layers of what was this construction maybe a few years ago, and then what happened after that. So there's a sense of layering that's creating this verticality and wall-like feeling.
And these gates also are somewhat reminiscent, of course, in a lot of distance, of the India-Pakistan border at Wagha, at Atari, where now there is this incredible display of nationalism and patriotism, and these the soldiers on both sides kind of bring flags down and goose step, and with big, they select on both sides the tallest soldiers to be there, and it's like this big display of machismo. But ultimately, what it is every evening they shut a gate basically, and there's a symbolism of the gate and the symbolism of who is kept out and who is brought in and who is right and who is wrong, that I think also I find so evocative that it's kind of easy to go from narrative to symbolic if there is a lot of symbol in the object itself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel the symbology keeps evolving as well. Given the current pandemic situation and even just sort of the lockdown, where all of us, there were so many restrictions upon us. Are we coming to the colored drawing series?
Yes, we are coming to the single work made up of the 12 panels that is right behind me. If you would like to go back to the black and white drawings of the gates, we can go back anytime. You can kind of, the layout, and you can kind of lead this whichever way you want. We are just basically going from one work to another. Do you want us to go back to the gates as you talk about the
No, I think it's fine. We can talk about this.
Okay, carry on. And you were starting to say about the pandemic and lockdown and this whole idea of locking, of staying inside a container, contained zone, etc.
Yeah, I was saying that in connection to the idea of the gate being a symbol of not one thing but so many things. Even sort of not even in physical terms and in real terms, but also I guess in unreal imaginations, spiritual terms as well. I think the gates are quite heavily symbolic for various reasons. So these series was actually they came out when I was taking a break from making the gates. And it was a way. I mean, the idea of the gates was to sort of simplify the imagery. So we have the gray gates against a white backdrop, but they're still quite detailed and time consuming. And I think at some point I was trying to explore imagery that would give me a way to sort of simplify things further, where they've just kind of narrowed down to compositions and color, play of color. and of course form. But when I started, so I started making these, pulling out sort of various elements that at that point, sort of stayed with me at some point, and they're taken from various parts of the city as well, from sort of some images that were more randomly taken, sometimes, things that I was quite curious about or stayed with me, and I went back and documented them again and again over time.
I
And
like
at
I
some
like the fact
point,
I like the fact, Seher, that there is also a stream of consciousness, almost like almost as if you were doodling or you were playing, you were riffing, you were like making up the tunes as you went about these works. That you were not bearing a burden of narration of a completely faithful depiction, but you were starting to sort of riff a little bit. These works really feel like that.
yeah, no, I mean that was the point. That was the starting of these works. I had so many of them. It didn't take me very long. There's so many that eventually got rejected when it sort of came to a point I had to sort of formalize the works in the setting of a gallery. And so I started sort of putting these drawings together to see what narrative or anti-narrative it was going to form. And in that process, of course, there was a lot there were a lot of changes that were made during that time. There was a lot of things that were rejected as well too. But I enjoy them in the sense where I mean they're sort of just they're broken debris. I see these as debris of an urban city, really.
So one question about your time of day and how you work and when you work and so on. So you are also now the head of the Department of Art. Congratulations, publicly and formally, at the Indus Valley School. So I'm sure your day, like the work day, the daylight hours, are quite jammed. And it seems to me that the show, this solo show of yours, almost can be divided into two parts. One part is stuff that you could do basically when you came back at night or before you went to work in the morning, which is a lot of these drawings have that sense. But the other stuff is something you would have to go to work with a fabricator, and that would kind of be the stuff that you did on days that you were free, you were not going or having to do work. How did you fit the creation, the art production of this show with your job? I see you're smiling.
So yeah, no, it's quite maddening, but I often do work at night because I have a day job, as you said. I don't have a specific designated studio even in my house. I share my living space with my parents. I live in a very typical South Asian family setting. So I'm often moving work from one space to another, wherever I can find space, which is why I guess the drawings are of a particular scale. The paintings, on the other hand, the site-specific work that I do is also, I guess, an outcome of the fact that I don't have a big enough space at home. And so I often, I enjoy painting. I call myself a painter, but I look for sites where I can maybe paint directly on surfaces, directly on wall. That's how I've been working since the last few years. I would say though that the lockdown did really help in a sense where I was working from one space rather than going to campus in the morning, staying there for a few hours, and then coming back. I was everything sort of the work, my interactions with students. It was all being done from one space, and that gave me a lot of time to think of my own work and develop my own imagery. Even the container works, I think the fact that there was a lockdown or a partial lockdown at the time in Karachi, there was ample space at work. And so these were painted there.
That's sorry.
For the Biennale, so the sculptural work tip, I made these first for the Karachi Biennale in 2019, and these are painted on site as the other sculptural works as well. They're often constructed and then painted on site.
So the one thing
and then they're left there.
One question about these works, and it doesn't have to be the case that that these specific ones, but these are not. We are not able to put them outdoors, or are they? Is it possible to put them outdoors?
So they can be outdoors because I've used paint, which is so the paint I've used for these and that I usually use for the containers it's industrial paint, and it's for outdoor. So it's outdoor sort of wall paint that people can paint their walls and I guess their buildings and houses. So they have a certain kind of water resistance in them. They're silk finish too, so you can kind of clean them with water as well. I think I mean it depends on if it's constant. If there's rain on them constantly, that may not be great. But so far, the ones I made for the Biennale, I left them on site, and I went to visit them after almost a year and a half, and they seemed pretty okay.
Okay, because this is a question I've received from some folks, and I've basically said something similar, which is that maybe not, but they can be if it comes, if push comes to shove. But I think that I like this idea of them sitting in this large space or even outdoors, as you had it in the Karachi Biennale, because it's a sense of these things floating up and down in the sea. It's almost as if this is a surface and these containers are bobbing their heads out, and you can't see 90% or 95% of it, but you can see some of it. But we've also been, as you know, we hung one of the tips on the wall, and it's, I think, looking quite successful. One of the things that we are trying to do is also visualize how this could be in a collector's collection. Where would it go? Where would it sit? And that was why I was asking the question about being outdoors. And perhaps these four works don't go outdoors, but I think that there is an incredible potential here if you sort of figured out how to do this in maybe some kind of a waterproof material or something like that, for these to be also proposed as public sculpture, as installations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I've never. It's difficult for me to think of my work in the sense where, I guess, from a collective point of view. But I have had a lot of people even ask me this when I made these for the Biennale, on why aren't you looking for material that could make them last forever? And I think part of my practice is trying to. I mean, I don't have that kind of time to go and scout for particular materials. So for me, it's things that I can find easily within my given space. But I've also always thought of my work, especially the installations and the painting, as something that doesn't really need to live forever. And that's why these paintings and sculptures are always left at site. I don't take them back with me. So they are where they are.
And when we first met and started working together, you were actually doing like completely, if you will, art, like you were doing a lot of stencil art on the streets and sidewalks that completely was, there was no intentionality there of it ever being in a collector's collection or anything like that. It was basically meant to be eroded by time. Yeah.
So the stencil art you mentioned earlier as well, I think, so that is something I did as a student.
Correct.
Yeah. Again, so the idea of sort of something that's not everlasting and something that just, is going to be there and is going to eventually decay and erode with time. So let time be a factor in sort of the fate of the work.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. No, I understand that, and that, in fact, is quite a humane way to think about it, but maybe not a very collector-friendly way of thinking about it. But,
I think I'm getting there slowly, though.
yeah, you have to thread the needle one way or another. So we have seen, I think, now pretty much everything, but I do want to go back once to a couple of works that we have, one all the way in the front and one here, which is basically one side of a tipped work. So it's basically MDF painted exactly configured in a way that could have been one of three sides, but is just an individual. And we have installed it with the apex at the top. But do you think that this, for instance, could have been hung such that one of the straight edges, let's say this one, this edge could be straight, and then the work could just be a triangle like that? Any thoughts on maybe?
Yeah. So when I made these, the idea was that it's going to be installed in a way that it looks like it's coming out of one of the edges, one of the sides of the walls, which is why the lower part, the base, does not have the frame.
Correct.
Right. So originally that was the intention, but I don't mind the way it's placed right now, because I think it would probably be a bit too obvious if we had done it the other way, my way, which was sort of put it in a way that it looks like it's sort of coming out of something, and it would be too similar to sort of the floor work. So I like the fact that there's something different in this, and it could be about something else other than just a container, a part of the container.
No, I think so. I think that you're right when you say that there are several works that are already doing this, emerging from the floor, emerging, even one of the tips we have, emerging from the wall. So this would probably, as a relief, this is fine. And this also, I think this work and the way we've shown it in particular, like, is super reminiscent art historically of, say, Lewitt's work, or of, and I really love this about the whole show. There is, I don't know, intentionally or accidentally, you make so many important art historic references. Lewitt is there, of course, but I would also say, Joseph Albers and his whole sort of color theory. But there's a lot here, and yet all this is brought together in this time of globalization. The container is a very, very powerful symbol of globalization. It's also, its surplus in any one place is usually also a symbol of a balance of trade. Because originally containers were conceived as something that you could put whatever goods you were shipping into. They could go to the destination, the goods could be taken out, and the container could be reused with new stuff. And if two countries had an equal balance of trade, there would be no containers lying around for becoming walls and defense things. And so a lot of these ideas, including some of the cooler ideas of making containers into an art village or something like that, fundamentally comes from a disbalance of trade. Fundamentally comes because, frankly, China exports way too much stuff to other countries, and these other countries do not export enough back to China. So there is and several, maybe China is not the only country to enjoy a balance of trade in its favor. But basically, these objects are also, there's so much meaning, so much symbolism in them, and yet they're such beautiful works of art. So I think I love this show.
Thank you. I wish I was there, because I can't really get a sense of anything right now, but maybe one day.
Yes, yes. We also wish you were here. I think you would really enjoy it. We have enjoyed putting the show together, hanging it, and all of that. I also think that this will see multiple iterations. So I think we'll also be showing some of these works in, say, art fairs. And I think that these are very art fair friendly. You know, the works will pop out and will attract audiences. You'll see people taking selfies and so on. So I think that this is a really exciting new body of work, and I think that we will work together for for a long time as you kind of evolve and process with these things. But I think this is a wonderful, wonderful show. We are so glad to be opening it. So, folks, it's almost time. So I'm going to just make a couple of housekeeping announcements. We opened the show contained by Seher Naveed, a Karachi-based visual artist, today, 24th of April. The show goes on through Linam 29th of May, goes through the 29th of May. So if you are in New York or in the New York area, please come see the show. We are open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 to 6, socially distanced. Everybody's wearing a mask, even though you see me not wearing a mask. That's only for the purposes of the show here. Those of you who want to see it online, it's at iconcontemporary.com. Next Saturday, which is the 1st of May, we are opening another solo by a Karachi-based artist, Afan Bakpati, called The Anatomy of a Horny Heart. And we will be doing an IG Live with Afan at that time, same time, a week from now. So check the works out, new photographs added to the website for the tip works. This is at iconcontemporary.com. Seher, thank you so much for such a wonderful show and for joining us today on IG Live.
Not at all. Thank you for having me here, and good luck with the opening today. I'll keep texting for updates.
Yes. So thanks. See you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and see you a week from now. Bye.